Survival games have a history of extended stays in early access. Obsidian's Grounded has been in the program for 18 months now and has continued to receive a ton of major updates. The biggest one yet is hot off the presses, which makes it a perfect time to check in on its progress. Featuring a small person in a big world motif, it easily strays outside the norms of the subgenre. Let's find out if Grounded is a game pass or a game fail.
Ready for adventure!
Grounded is essentially Honey, I Shrunk the Kids as a survival game. After an experiment goes wrong, you are left as food for hideous insects and other critters. The objective is to return back to normal size while surviving the horrors of the backyard. The game does a great job of making normally innocent creatures like ants and ladybugs absolutely terrifying. Then there are the spiders. The labyrinth of foliage and assorted junk is interesting to explore with all kinds of materials and enemies to find. The actual survival mechanics are fairly standard. You have hunger and thirst meters to manage, but you can't just go around sipping out of any puddle.
This is probably not a good idea.
You either risk illness drinking murky water or search for clean sources like dew droplets hanging on plants or from a juice box's straw. You must also gather materials to craft new weapons, armor, and tools that help make surviving just a little bit easier. But all these mechanics are paint by the numbers.
I feel a little less squishy now.
The combat in Grounded is very simple. Using whatever melee weapon you have, you must bash insects until they die. Eventually, you can craft ranged weapons and use status effects, but we've yet to gain the required materials. Despite the simple combat, even on the normal difficulty setting, enemies are surprisingly difficult to kill. Before you are able to craft armor and better weapons, the basic ants will wipe you out in just a few hits. Even after you are properly equipped, they still present a challenge. Larger insects can take you out in one shot, so while you may be inclined to run or dodge, you won't be getting the materials you need to eventually defeat them more easily. It's a confounding cycle. The game doesn't make it clear if we need better gear, better technique, or friends to help via cooperative play. Like a lot of games in early access, Grounded lacks any significant narrative or progression track. You immediately find the machine that did the shrinking, turn it on again, and an explosion occurs at a nearby oak tree.
My bad?
When you investigate, you find a mysterious lab and a friendly robot that claims science may help return you to normal size. And that's where it all basically ends. You find the robot's chips scattered around the yard that lead to new recipes to buy with the currency you earn when you analyze new materials or complete random tasks.
Processing speed increased 0.0000000003%.
It isn't clear which chips you should prioritize or what you need to access them. Mostly, the plot is developed by a handful of scattered audio logs.
It's time to restart spacer development.
While it's undoubtedly unfinished, what's included in Grounded thus far is fairly polished. We've got stuck a couple of times, but that happens in a lot of open-world games. It's not completely bereft of problems, though. There's an enemy robot in the lab that's hard to damage with basic weapons. When you try talking to a friendly robot for hints, it will kill you mid-dialogue tree. It's still a rough draft, and sometimes it shows. The recent survival game Explosion hasn't passed Game Pass by. There are plenty of options. The cream of the crop is Subnautica and its expand-alone release, Below Zero. These aquatic survival games have received high praise from both players and critics alike. Breathage is a space survival game that's been chided for having an immature tone, but it's sold well since release. Project Winter is a competitive take on the multiplayer survival game, and it's also received solid reviews. The developers behind episodic survival game The Long Dark credit Game Pass for all its success. New episodes continue to be released on a regular basis. Then there's the cloud-driven Astroneer, where you're asked to settle new worlds in the 25th century. It has a heavy cooperative element as well. Open-world games like No Man's Sky include survival elements among dozens of others. If you enjoy holding on by the skin of your teeth, there's plenty of opportunities to do so on Game Pass. Now it's time to find out. Is Grounded a game pass or a game fail? As its name suggests, Grounded has a solid foundation. An interesting theme, solid mechanics, and a tried-and-true gameplay loop lead to an appealing experience that its developers have continued to update over the past year plus. But it's also an early access game on a service full of complete and expanding competition. Games like Subnautica and No Man's Sky have already been forged through fire, so it's hard for a work in progress to measure up. Grounded may ultimately end up as best in class on Game Pass a year or so from now, but even with its latest update, it's nowhere close to that right now. The real answer is to wait and see what it becomes. But we're not in that business with this video series. Grounded gets a game fail. For next week, we are looking at Age of Empires 4.